Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Backfield Committee podcast. We have our great friend and contributor Manu here with us. Manu, how are you?
I'm good.
All
Excited
right.
to talk NFC West.
Yeah, and that's actually what we're doing. We're talking ADPs of the NFC West, and we see you ready with your Steve Young jersey. Very cool. Love it. It looks actually fresh.
Celebrate the heyday.
Yeah, it looks fresh and new. Did you just get that for us to?
May have made some investments here for podcast wardrobe.
Very good. I love it. Looks good on you. Red is
Thank
your
you.
color for sure.
Thank you.
So as always, I'm just going to remind the folks the way this works is we have the 8 ADPs, PPR, and standard for all the NFC West teams, and we're only going to talk about the guys who actually matter, who have ADPs, who people will be drafting, and these ADPs are from the last week. They are only human picks, no AI, no auto picks, nothing like that. So we have the best possible info of what people are thinking out there. And, we hope to actually tell you whether we're buying or selling these ADPs, if you should be listening to what the consensus says, or if you should be listening to us, which I think they should be listening to us, right, Manu?
If you're not listening to us, who are you listening to?
I mean, just clowns. They're listening to
Straight up
clowns.
misinformation. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We're not going to get into that into this episode, but yes, misinformation, it's greatest. Well, we're going to start with the Cardinals. We're not going to waste any more time here. And the first guy on that team is Jacoby Brissett, and he currently has an ADP of 167. And to be honest with you, based on the numbers he put up last year, that was a little surprising to me. I thought people would still be picking him a little earlier. He's not really in a better situation this year. That team's still very crappy. At least it is on paper. I think they'll still be playing from behind a lot, doing a lot of throwing. So either the people don't believe in what Jacoby Brissett did last year, or they're forgetting. I don't know what it is, but at Brissett, if you have a weak QB1, or if you really just went the no QB path and he's one of the last few guys that are left that are still viable, I don't really hate him. I mean, we know that offense is a little scary, but Michael Wilson feels like a beast to me. So I'm going to rely on him. Trey McBride, still a beast. So we know he's going to have the pass catchers there. Just will he be able to do what he did last year? I'm going to buy that ADP. That's solid. I don't mind it. How about yourself?
I think it's fine. In a single quarterback league, there's no way I'm drafting him. I just don't see the point because you have so many options. Even if you're in like a 14 team league, you're probably going to find someone with a little bit more upside. He's not mobile. He did throw a ton last year. I don't know that that's what they want to do. I'm sure they want to be better running the ball, and I think they're going to be at least a little bit more successful this year. But you're right that they're going to be trailing. He's going to have volume. I don't mind him as my QB2 in Superflex. Obviously, I would prefer someone better as my QB2, but if I'm getting sniped, I'll take him and hope to figure something out later in the season. So this ADP puts him in round, 14? And so that's fine. I mean, that's the time when you're thinking kicker or defense. And so maybe you did something really weird and you really waited on QB and you end up taking Brissett. I think it's fine.
Yeah, I think in a 2 QB league, like if you can have him in a 2 QB league, that actually seems really good. And you don't think he's going to be able to kind of have similar stats to what he did last year?
I think last year was kind of a perversion of modern offense. I just don't see him like leading the league in pass attempts, which I think he did or was close to last year. So plus I think at some point they're going to want to look at the QB they drafted from Miami. At
Carson
some
Beck?
point later in the season.
No,
Carson Beck, thank you.
Stop it. That guy's terrible.
They're not gonna ride with Brissett the whole season. They got to see what they have in that guy. Obviously, they're going to be drafting a quarterback next year, and they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league. The rookie's going to get a look at some point, and Brissett's going to go to the bench.
Okay, and one last question on that, Brissett, before we move on. So let's say you get stuck with, I don't know, Jackson Dart, maybe even Tyler Shuck type, and you can play with the names, I guess, in that range. Would you take Brissett as your number 2? Like, in that, I know it's kind of like 14th round, not the last round, but he's towards the end. So, like towards one of those final rounds, you're not really seeing anything else there that's like really interesting and your quarterback's a little weak. Are you
Yeah.
Are you at all interested in Brissett, or are you just going to let him linger in free agency?
I don't think so. No. I think I'll take my chances and play the waiver wire. Now, I mean, you got to know your league. If you're in a league where everyone drafts 2 QBs automatically, then maybe I do it. But unless I'm in a unique situation like that, I would not. Leave him on the wire, take my chances.
Okay. One thing I do want our fans and listeners to know is that Manu is a Niners fan, obviously, based on what he's wearing. So I think these are also kind of homer takes. So I think he just hates the Cardinals so much because they're division rivals that he's just anybody who's not a Niner, their value is probably going to be lowered a little.
Arizona's not relevant enough to generate much hatred. You know, it's kind
That's
of like
fair.
They're like a wounded animal. You know, you can't.
Ouch.
How much abuse can you heap on them? You know,
ouch.
They've got enough issues without me saying anything.
All right, very fair. So basically what he's saying is for the Cardinals, his takes are real. Once we get to the other division teams, take it with a little grain of salt, basically.
Yes,
fair enough.
That's right.
All right, next guy up is Jeremiah Love, and his current PPR ADP is 28th and 31.7 in standard. So basically middle of the third round, early fourth round in standard. And this is within a week. So even with the injury hitting and us knowing that he's got probably a high ankle sprain, he hasn't really dropped that much, right? Like it's still pretty premium picks here, but definitely lower than you would expect him. You know, probably before the injury, he was probably going middle second, maybe even early second. So I'll take it to you first on this one. Do you think this is the spot to draft him with this injury, or do you think it's still a little high?
I think it's a little bit high. It's not too high, but we're talking late second round early third round. And so guys who are going around there are people like Trey McBride, Devontae Smith, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, Breece Hall. Those other running backs, I think, are probably a little bit safer than Love. They're not going to want to rush him into action with this injury at the very beginning of his career. LaFleur said a lot of bizarre things about, or maybe it was Hackett said a lot of bizarre things about, a committee and playing James Conner and all playing Algier and all of this stuff. I don't fully buy that, but I also think that they're not going to push him too hard in a season that is really a developmental season. So plus they're going to be behind all the time. And as we talked about, he is a good receiver, but I don't know that they're going to be trotting him out there when they're down 20 points in the.
Good receiver or good running back?
Both.
I mean, it's like as a receiving back,
as a pass catching running back.
Gotcha.
Yeah, sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah, actually, so Hackett is. I wasn't aware Hackett was actually the offensive coordinator there, and Adam mentioned it the other day, and. Once I found that out, that kind of lowered everybody's ADP immediately for me because that dude.
It's a huge red flag. Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I don't know. Every time you say his name, kind of, I feel something regurgitating in my stomach. That guy is ugly, but yeah, I mean,
You're hacking something up.
Hacking something up for sure.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I hear what you're saying. Just, I think people are still, as long as we're going to be seeing that he's ready for week 1, right? Like, so the big question right now as we're talking is whether he's actually going to be ready for week 1. We don't know. But if he is, I think that ADP is actually going to rise again. So I don't think you're going to be able to get him later, but that is a scary injury. And, we know rookies don't always perform and that team just overall is so bad. I think the ADP itself is fair where it is now with the injury, but I think I would still pass on him, just like you're saying. Just because there's so much scary stuff there. We don't know what Allgeier's role is going to be early in the season and potentially throughout the season, right? Like they might not phase Allgeier out at any point, especially if it's an effective 1-2 punch, for instance. We don't know what's going to happen. So yeah, I'm also fading that ADP. Sounds like we're both on the same page.
Absolutely. Yeah. I look down even further. Javonte Williams ADP is 40. Travis Etienne is 42. I'd much rather take those guys a couple rounds later.
Yeah, Javonte gets no respect. It's really strange. I mean, like we know the injury stuff, but yeah, Javonte, we've talked about him previously on here, but yeah, he seems to get no respect. So yeah, absolutely. In standard, Javonte is ahead of him, but yeah, guys like Breece Hall are behind him. Etienne, like you said it. You said it, brother. You're hitting all the high notes here today. Well,
We're going to agree too much again. This is not good.
No, it's good.
Can't have that.
It's good. You
hated it. You complained that you agreed too much, and you were happy to mix it up with Adam. And so I'm going to try and bring a little more fire this time.
You hate it. You and Adam hate it. You guys both told me, "Oh, Sam, you can't keep going first. We agree with you too much. You're kind of like Messiah. This stuff." I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
Whoa. Oh, you don't remember saying that now? Now I'm just making stuff up.
That slipped my mind.
Yeah, weird.
I must have got edited out.
Yeah, weird. All right. No, it's good. It's good to agree. Of course, it's good to mix it up a little as well. But listen, sometimes just there's nothing to disagree on. We're not putting on a show here, folks, okay? We're trying to educate. That is the goal. So, speaking of education, Tyler Algier is going to educate us all on how to steal touchdowns, I feel, this year. And his ADP is actually pretty good, in my opinion. He's 154.8, basically 155. And one in PPR, 153 in standard. And that is basically the end of the 13th round. So I think that's an amazing ADP, especially in standard. I get it in the PPR. He's not really a catch passer, although he is capable of catching passes. But in standard, that is crazy. I think I'm buying those all day, because first of all, again, Love is coming off that injury. We don't know how effective he's going to be to start the season if he is there week 1. And we don't know how much work they're going to put on his shoulders, right? Like coming off a high ankle sprain. So to me, that standard is a great ADP. I mean, I'd love to get him there. The PPR more questionable. Like I said, he's not really a big pass catcher. He, will pull in maybe one reception a game or something that I think has been his career average. But yeah, I'd love that ADP in standard.
Agree. You might even get a start out of him in week 1. If Love is not back. I don't know what the Cardinals were doing, but they went out and gave this guy a big contract and then drafted Love. I don't know if that was by design, but Algier has been good down by the goal line. He would occasionally vulture TDs from a Bijan, and he's going to do the same thing here. They're not going to be in the red zone that much, but they'll be there enough to pay off this ADP easily, I think. So I'm buying this ADP without question.
Yeah, I think it's the Nathaniel Hackett design where you kind of just create a losing chaos is what I would call it.
Losing chaos. I like that. Yeah.
Just doing nothing that makes sense. Probably nothing most teams would do. But, that's weird the way they approach the offseason at the running back position. And they still have Connor, Benson, right? So it's just really wild how that situation might play out. I could imagine maybe at some point, all of these guys are just rotating, just being inactive 1 week and then next week, they have a solid role or some kind of role where they're getting touches. So I want to ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
As you know, in Tenactons, I have Mr. Algier. I was trying to trade him to the man who owns Bijan. And now Will, who's getting Love, is asking me for him. In your opinion, what's a fair value for Tyler Algier currently? And
I think a second, maybe a second and a third, or a second and a throw-in, but I think a second round pick.
This year or next year?
Well, next year presumably would be more valuable. That's what I would hold out.
Okay, that's it. Okay, what kind of throw-in? Some small,
something small.
So what if Love's not playing week 1?
I think still, if I was Will, I'm not going to give up more than a second. I'm not going to do 2 seconds. I'm certainly not going to do a first for 1 week. It's a dynasty league. So if I was him, I would stick to my guns and just offer a second, and maybe the throw-in is a little bit better, but yeah, no, I'm not going much above that because it's still fundamentally, it's a bad team with a bad offensive line. A guy who just got the number 3 pick drafted over him. So I can't go too crazy.
Okay. Already heard, but okay, no problem. But so let me ask you, I guess, this. So we kind of agreed that if Love is coming back week 1, he'll give me a second next year, but he has 4 seconds. He has 2 that should be relatively high in the second round, 1 that, can fall somewhere between high to mid. And then he's got 1 really late, or at least, obviously based on the rosters, we assumed it's going to be really late. So which one of those seconds would you feel comfortable?
The high to mid, the second one, the high to mid one. That's the one that I think is fair. Is this binding? Are you going to take it to Will now?
No, I mean, we kind of have a deal. I told him if Love is playing week one, I'll do a second next year. So, but
Yeah,
we didn't actually discuss which second. So
right.
I was just, I wouldn't take like the one that's going to be at this point, looks like it's going to be the worst second. Like, I don't want a
Right,
late
right.
second
No,
next
no.
year. But
Just
okay.
hold him then. Yeah.
Right. And I was getting so much grief. Like, what do you need Algier for? And it's like, I mean, I don't need him, but he's not hurting my roster. Like, I'm not just going to give him away either. It makes no sense.
Yeah, right, right.
So, but I got yelled at by not by Will, but MJ. MJ yelled at me like, "What do you need this guy for?" Like, it just makes no sense. Like, why is he hurting my team in any sense? I couldn't convince him that it's not hurting
I
my
don't
team.
think he's bad for team chemistry. I think he's a good soldier.
He's the best actually. He'll take those hard downs, take the punishment inside. Like, yeah, you gotta love Alliger.
Well, our next guy is a very good soldier. He's a high character guy, I think, right? You like that
Yeah,
segue?
yeah, that was pretty good. James Conner here.
Cancer
Oh,
survivor.
yeah, I mean, his life story is great. And, he went from kind of being a middling running back in the Steelers to winning me titles, being like a really awesome running back in Dynasty. Went from, I think, getting injured often to kind of putting in full seasons and then back to getting injured. So, but he does have a PPR ADP only. It's 160th. So that's early 14. But to me, this kind of makes no sense because I don't know what his role is going to be. It doesn't seem like he will have a role. Maybe people are drafting him with the hope that he gets cut and goes somewhere else. But even then, I don't really like that ADP. So to me, this is a pass. I have no interest in James Conner, even if Love is missing week one because Benson, I saw came back to practice now and he doesn't even have an ADP, but it's just like so muddled there. I have no interest in Connor. He's old, always, like I mentioned, injury prone. So I'm just going to pass on Connor altogether.
I'm going to disagree with you. So I'm going to buy him at this ADP, which is round 14. We're talking really late. I think he's an easy guy to cut because if you make it to like week one, week two, and nothing's happening, like he's not getting released, he's not getting traded, he's not cleared, then you cut him. He's an easy cut, but the upside, I think, is still there for him to go to another team and be a contributor. Someone is going to get hurt, and then he's going to be a really appealing piece for somebody to add. And I just don't think they're going to let him languish on the bench there. I think he is going to get another opportunity. The injury that he had, I believe, was like a broken ankle or something. It was some sort of ankle injury. It wasn't I don't believe it was an ACL or an Achilles.
No,
So,
it wasn't nice.
it's something that he could come back from. And, and he had several years early in the league where he didn't have a lot of miles on him. So I think he's still got something left. And he's a quality player who can catch passes and run between the tackles. And so I think he's worth a late flyer, but obviously he's your first guy that you cut when there's a sexy waiver claim.
Yeah, no, it wasn't ACL, but it was a severe right foot injury, required surgery. So yeah, I hear you. It's just the problem is he's played one full season in his career, has gone over 13 or games played just 3 times, and that was 14, 15, and 16. And on top of all that, he's 31. So to me, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I just feel like he would be more a waste of a spot than actual help at any point. But yeah, I could definitely see a path to relevance for James Conner. So fair enough. All right. So that takes us to probably the most tweeted guy in the fantasy landscape, at least in terms of highlights or lowlights.
Social media star. Yeah.
Yeah. However you want to look at it. Marvin Harrison Jr., 66th in PPR, 63.5 in standard. So that's basically mid second round, early to sixth round, not second round. That would be crazy. And I don't hate him here, right? Like I'm still a slight believer in Harrison. His rookie year seemed promising. Yes, I know last year he had a very bad down year, but he also was injured. I've had this conversation. Might have been with you, might have been with Adam. I don't remember who it was, but if we're using the injury excuse for Buka's downslide after his hot start, why can't I use Harrison's, awful season as an excuse? The injury is the excuse. So yeah, to me, Harrison at this ADP is really good. Worth the draft for sure. I think his upside is really high. Are there question marks? Am I comfortable drafting Harrison and knowing that, hey, I'm going to lock this dude in as my probably number 2 receiver, maybe even a bench receiver at that number? No, of course not. I mean, he could be a guy I'm looking at every week saying, oh my goodness, this guy gave me another 6. Or, he like had a touchdown and 40 yards. So that's like a really empty 10 I'm getting from him. But I'm definitely going to hold him at that ADP. That seems really good to me.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of like him at this ADP. The other receivers going around this range in the 60s, Alec Pierce, who, is walking wounded. Parker Washington, who I like better. DK Metcalf and Michael Pittman, who, they're sort of kind of cap ceiling guys. Brian Thomas Jr. is a big question mark. Carnell Tate, who's talented, but a big question mark as far as the offense goes. I think I would take Marvin Harrison probably second out of that group behind Parker Washington of the guys in this range, because the talent is there. This guy, his college evaluation was almost spotless. And I don't believe that talent just disappears. And you're right. He's been banged up. He's been injured. He's been in a bad system. He's had different coaches. So I think that, and once the social media pylon starts, it doesn't stop. Like there were fantasy football experts, analysts tweeting stuff about, oh, he seems depressed. And I mean, come on, like seriously. Like I think that we try to get inside the heads of these people and we don't know them at all. And there have been just as many highlights, actual, not lowlights, tweeted out after the initial firestorm. No one talks about that, right? So is he going to live up to the pre-draft billing? Probably not. But is he going to be a very good value at this draft pick in the 60s? I would take him at that ADP. I'll buy him. He's your ideal wide receiver 3. He's a pretty good wide receiver 2, decent, assuming you did well with your wide receiver.
So I'm going to take a side quest. I know it's not really encouraged to take side quests in these long videos, but I'm going to do it anyway. Have you had the chance to watch our really well-made AFC South ADP breakdown?
I listened to it. I didn't watch it.
Yeah, watch. I apologize.
Yes.
And do you at all recall my conversation with Adam re Parker Washington?
I do not. No, I've forgotten.
See, this is why you should be re-listening. Everybody really should be re-listening to these videos.
I should have been taking notes. And that was the big mistake. I think everyone should have, their notes app open or pen and paper if you're old school, because the knowledge being dropped here, it needs to be picked up, collected, and saved.
Well, listen,
I failed to do that. I'm sorry. So refresh my memory on Parker.
No, I will. Oh, don't you worry about it. I will. But what I'm about to say, what I want to say is, first of all, a lot of people listening on Spotify are potentially driving. So please don't take notes if you're driving or anything like that.
Yes.
But, right. You can have the AI just create kind of a summary for you. But anyway, let me tell you the things that I spoke about. And that is the fact that Parker Washington wasn't even the leading target getter on his own team last year. Do you want to know?
Was it Jacoby Myers?
Jacoby Myers, a guy who came over mid-season, right? Doesn't know the offense, doesn't know, really much, and is still the leading receiver, target getter. Forget receiver, just target getter on that offense. That's why I'm kind of very confused by the Parker Washington love and just everybody like proclaiming he's going to break out and be great. His numbers were okay last year. They weren't even that good, right? Like, he had 58 receptions, 850 yards, 5 TD. These aren't like bum numbers, but why are we just appointing him as the guy who steps up and becomes this huge, target earner, becomes the number 1 guy in that team?
Because I think they overhauled the offense at midseason. At the beginning of the season, they were funneling everything through Brian Thomas Jr. And that was an abject failure, total disaster, right?
Sure.
And so then at midseason, they said, you know what? No, Parker Washington and Myers are our starting guys. Those are the guys we scheme around. BTJ can come and go. He can be the third receiver. He can be the deep threat, but we're going to run the offense through these 2 guys. And if you look at the second half of the year, and the stats are much better, particularly down the stretch, 10 for 145 against Denver, 10 for 115 against Indy, 9 for 87 and a touchdown against Tennessee. So, down the stretch, they They reconfigured the offense, changed the roles, and supposedly, I mean, we're getting deep into AFC South side quest. I just want to
Yes.
say, but
Yes.
you know, supposedly this year, like Parker is not coming off the field, Myers is probably not coming off the field, and then Thomas and Hunter and the rest of them are going to fill in around them. So it took them a while to realize what they had, but once they did, I think Parker was a feature.
I mean, I'm just saying, this dude had in 9 games, 71 reception, 71 targets, averaged basically 7 targets a game. And now he's got a whole offseason to learn that offense, right? You know, just looking at Parker, he had 95 in how many? 16 games, right? So what does that give us? Hold on. I'm learning to use these calculators as
Probably about nine a game.
That's not 9. No way. 9 a game? No, that's too much. That's 8, not even. That's like 6. He's averaging like 6 targets a game. So
6 targets a game.
Yeah, 6.5 maybe. So yeah, I mean, I just feel Jacoby Myers has had a whole off season to learn that offense. Like you said, they adjusted the offense. Maybe they even adjusted it more. Why can't it be towards Jacoby, or why can't it be more even? I just think Parker is getting way too much hype. I don't want to, take too much more time on the side quest. But to me, I think Marvin Harrison, as of now, would be ahead of Parker Washington for me personally, just based on what we saw last year and knowing that, Jacoby now has, just knowing Jacoby's track record first and foremost, and knowing he's had a whole offseason to learn that offense. But yeah, if you had listened and paid attention, we wouldn't have to take this much time for the side quest. So I blame you folks. Manu's fault. Just roast him in those comments, please. And as you roast him, we will go to Michael Wilson, and his ADP PPR is 76. Standard is 75.7. So basically, he's a 7th round guy, middle of 7th round, early actually 7th round. Man, I don't know what to think of this ADP. It seems fair based on what he did last year. Of course, this is way late. If he can come even close to like what he did last year. But nobody knows, right? That's just such a mystery box, that offense. Like, it seems like him and Brissett have like a great connection together. So I would think that's where it's going to go. But Harrison is still the number one. I would imagine the coaches are saying, hey, we need to feed our beast, our potential beast. So what does this do? I know when Michael Wilson and Harrison were both together in the lineup, they both kind of struggled. Will that continue? I don't know. So for me, because there's so many unknowns, early 7th round seems way too early for Michael Wilson. I would have to see him drop maybe a round, possibly even 2 before I can consider taking him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think it was like a perfect confluence of events. I would like to disagree, but I can't, much to my chagrin, because I think that the point that you hit the nail on the head was that his best games came when Marvin was either out or injured, beat up, and he was just a target magnet along with McBride, and I think that I don't know that that's totally sustainable. I think he might be a little better in PPR than in standard. The ADPs are actually flipped on that, but they're similar. Guys who are going in that range are Tate. You can get Godwin later. You can get Josh Downs and Wan'Dale Robinson later. I would take all of those guys over Michael Wilson, I think, because it's around more of value. So the ADP is not horrible, but I would sell him just because I don't think he can repeat what he did.
Yeah, it's just hard to rely on. He probably could do what he did before, but just, I don't know if that's in this system or while Harrison is healthy, right? Like, we don't know. But, as a later guy, just maybe even as a stash to see how Harrison comes out. I'd love to see how it goes week 1, right? So, if I could, in a perfect world, get him late enough where I'm comfortable taking him and seeing how week 1 goes, I would love that. But at this ADP, I'm just going to have to pass.
Right.
All right. So next up is to me, the best piece of this offense, Trey McBride, 28.8 in PPR, 48.8 in standard. So that's early 2nd, early 3rd in PPR, and late 4th in standard, early 5th. But interesting thing is that's actually showing up as 1st in PPR and 2nd in standard to Mr. Brock Bowers just to pick behind Brock. So the huge difference, 20 picks, is kind of weird to me. Like,
Yeah.
in standard, I would think he would be closer because in standard, you usually take running backs, right? Like less receivers. So I don't actually get the huge difference here. It's weird to me. But so I'm not going to speak on that as much as speaking on him being the first in PPR, bless you, and being slightly ahead of Brock in PPR and slightly behind him in standard. So that's where he's supposed to go. So that's my advice. If you want a elite tight end, it's McBride, it's Bowers, whichever order you want to go. That's up to you. I still believe in the Cardinals offense being more effective than the Raiders offense. And I just feel like the Raiders offense of Jeanty and Bowers might have to take on so much that they could easily get injured, nicked up, just not be as effective as the season progresses. So to me, McBride personally is better, but I can't really argue one way or the other. So that's how I'm going to approach this. The ADPs, I guess, based on where the first tight ends are going are fine to me. I don't hate it. Right. But I don't know. The standard one seems way too low. I think he should be going earlier.
Yeah, I agree. The standard ADP of 48 seems too low. The PPR ADP of 29 seems a little too high for me. I would personally take Bowers over him. I just think he's a superior talent. I think you can't go wrong with either one. But for me, I kind of prefer to wait and take a more scarce position like running back and wait on someone like Loveland or Tyler Warren or someone else who's in just a slight tier down, but still has really good upside. I have 3 numbers for you on Trey McBride that are astonishing. Last year, he had 32 red zone targets, 19 end zone targets, and ran 120 more routes than any other tight end. So the volume was just insane. And so the question you have to ask is is that sustainable? I don't think it is. I think that, if we're talking about Marv getting more looks and the running backs getting more action, it's going to come at the expense of McBride. And I think that McBride is going to have a good season no matter what, but I don't think he's going to hit the lofty heights that he hit last year. Those numbers were all real outliers if you look at the last 10 years or so of data, according to JJ Zacharyson, a good analyst, not quite at our level, but pretty good. And so those are numbers that he put out, and to me, it just doesn't seem sustainable. You're drafting him at his absolute peak, at his ceiling, and I tend not to want to do.
Yeah, I hear you. I think sure the touchdown regression, very high potential there that it's going to happen, but the targets are just there, and it's 2 years in a row already, right? Where the targets are elite. So to me, it's just, again, if Bowers was not a guy who's just going to be getting hit by 6 guys each time they even throw the ball in his direction, and I feel, and I had confidence that he can stay fresh and healthy all year, I would definitely say Bowers all day. But that offense is just so limited. I just think the wear and tear potentially could be a problem as the season progresses. I don't see that issue for McBride, right? Like they just have much more weapons. So that's the difference to me. But yeah, you're making super valid points here. That's why I said to me, it's really like a coin toss which one you take. I can't make an argument against the other.
Yeah, I think also that the brain trust in Las Vegas, I think, is a little bit better than in Arizona, and I think they're going to scheme up a better offense. But you're right. I mean, there are more weapons in Arizona.
Yeah, the coaching brain trust, yes. The higher ups, I don't know. I mean, because they did have a Gino, and who was the coach last year with Gino there? So it's the same owners. So yes, it seems like they did a better job hiring this time around. All right,
Should we move on to the Super Bowl favorites?
Yeah, that takes care of the Cardinals, and we're going to move on.
So much to my chagrin, the Super Bowl favorites are the Los Angeles Rams, who are sporting MVP quarterback Matthew Stafford. 1 year ago at this time, he was in an Airstream, and people thought that his back was falling apart and he was basically headed to the morgue. But he got up off the mat and had an MVP season and came within a whisper of the Super Bowl. His ADP in PPR and standard is the same at 77. So guys who are in that range are people like, let's see, Kyle Pitts, Carnell Tate, Chuba Hubbard, Harold Fannin. Other quarterbacks nearby are Jalen Hurts is a little behind him, and Brock Purdy is about 10 picks later. Jaden Daniels goes about a half round higher. I think I am selling him at this ADP. I think he's a really good player, a Hall of Fame quarterback. I bet his ADP will drop a little bit as we get closer to the season and people get excited about running quarterbacks. But he had a career high in touchdown percentage, like the percentage of his touchdown percentage or touchdown rate was the highest of his career by a full point. It was 7.7%, eclipsing anything he's done before. I think that's going to regress a little bit. On paper, they've got a phenomenal defense. They shouldn't have to throw quite as much. So I'm selling this ADP. If he falls to me, a couple rounds later, pick 77 would be round 7. If I can get him round 10, I'm going home really happy, but I'm not taking him in this 7.
Yeah, it's great to see him finally getting some respect. This is a dude who was like a free agent in a lot of leagues last year, even when he was like putting up the numbers. But yeah, I mean, I'll have to sell this ADP. 46-8 is what he did last year, 4,700 yards. The yardage is doable. He's done it before, right? That offense with Puka, prolific. But 46-8 is very hard to repeat. That's like elite, Mahomes and his super prime type of numbers. And on top of that, there's just like so many quarterbacks behind him that I'm more than happy to just wait on, right? Like I see Lawrence going behind him, Goff, or Herbert, Knicks, like Dart, all these other dudes that I don't have to spend on a 60-year-old quarterback with back problems who, yes, he made it through the year last year, but how do I know the Rams aren't just like running away with that division or a bye week and just say, hey, maybe we'll sit them down for a game or two here when it matters most for me in my fantasy playoffs. So there's just a lot of things for me not to pay for that at ADP. I know that's not going to happen to the younger, healthier quarterbacks, but Stafford that is seemingly a potential issue with.
Yeah, and maybe it's wishful homer thinking on my part, but I think that the offensive situation, as good as it looks, is a little more fragile than it appears on the surface with, you've got Devontae Adams, who we're going to talk about him in a minute, but, lived off of touchdowns last year. The yardage is coming down. He's getting up in age. And Puka, you've got so many outs. It's like a choose your own adventure of disasters. Could he end up like with some sort of anti-Semitic incident or misogyny? Or could he get in a fight with a streamer? Could he injure himself when he takes on 5 tacklers after one of his amazing catches? There are many outs for Puka to not be playing football at various points in the year. So, and they're very concentrated on those two guys in their passing attacks. So it looks fantastic when everything is going well, but I don't know that the depth is there, and I don't know that it seems a little fragile to me for Stafford.
Yeah, fair.
All right, so let's talk about his running back, Kyren Williams. Kyren has a PPR ADP of 31 and a standard ADP of 21 or 22, so big spread there of almost a full round. The guys who go in that range, we're talking about running backs like Kenneth Walker, Hampton, Love, Josh Jacobs above him, and then just below him, Breece Hall, Cam Skattebo, Javonte Williams. I think that I would sell this ADP. Kyren is solid. I don't know that the upside is there. I don't know the ceiling is there. Quorum keeps worming his way in and gets a higher and higher percentage of the snaps as the seasons go on and as last season went on. So I think Kyren is a solid pick, but I feel like I could get a little bit more upside if I took someone like a Javonte Williams around later, or even a Cam Skattebo, which is a little riskier, but might have a little more pass catching upside. What do you think, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely selling that ADP in standard. That is way too high. Like you said, there's like so many guys who are going behind him that I just rather wait on. It's really a little strange to me that he's so high in in standard. I mean, like Hampton's behind him, Williams, like Brees, Etienne, all these dudes. In PPR, he's a little more interesting. I don't hate that ADP as much. He's still got a few guys who are interesting to me behind him. I'd probably still go Brees ahead of him, but I don't hate the PPR ADP as much. The standard I'm definitely selling, but he's been effective basically every year he's in the league. It looks like they figure out how to use him. 2 years ago when he had over 300 touches, he actually lost a lot of efficiency. And last year they kind of kept his rushing touches lower, and he went back to like being hyper efficient. So I think they figure out a way to use him. Corum doesn't really catch that many passes, which makes me think that Kyren is going to continue being on the field for third downs. They were talking up Corum last year, and even though he did have a bump, and I know we'll get to Corum, so I don't want to speak on it too much, but he did have a bump in touches and use last year. Kyren still did his thing. He's scored double-digit touchdowns 3 years in a row. He just seems like a guy they trust. So I'll take the PPR ADP. I'd like him a little cheaper just because Corum is there, but that offense is just like a well-oiled machine. I have like no fear that he's going to lose his job at any point, even, as much as they want to talk up boosting Corum's value. It just doesn't seem like even if they give him an extra touch a game or 2 touches a game, it's going to affect Kyren too much. They trust him. He's effective. I'm going to take the PPR ADP. Definitely sell the standard ADP.
Fair. Yeah, he just kind of feels like a bit of a floor play to me. Like, some of it depends on my team build. Like I'm taking him in the second or third round. My first or second picks are riskier guys, boomer bust guys. Then maybe Kyren seems a little more attractive. If I took really like safe-ish guys, older guys, proven guys in the first couple of rounds, then maybe I want someone with a little more upside and a little more flash when I get to the spot where Kyren's.
Yeah, that's fair. But to me, he's a very safe RB2, right?
Very safe, yeah. All right, so our next guy is his running mate, Blake Corum. His PPR ADP is 120. His standard ADP is 107. So that puts him round 9 or round 10, late round 9, late round 10. I'm buying this ADP all day. I think I'm a little bit of a Corum guy based on our dynasty mock that we did, where, speaking of mocks, I was mocked for taking him as my RB2, which was a bit ambitious in retrospect. But I think that, he had one of the highest explosive run rates of any running back with enough qualifying touches last year. His touches and share of the touches trended up as the season went on. And, apparently he looks good in camp. Now, it's true, we have heard this before. I think this is a team, though, that likes to bring along their running backs slowly, kind of like Dallas, with they did the same with like bringing Rico Dowdle along slowly and then setting him off. So I think Corum could have a breakout this year. I think the upside is pretty high. And as we talked about, this is a team with a good defense that may try to run the ball a little bit more. And even if Kyren has a good season, Corum, I think, could be a good flex play for you. And to get that in the 9th or 10th round, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I like Corum. I don't mind him in the 9th, 10th round. Definitely really solid ADPs. I mean, he's a guy who will be in a lot of lineups as like a random flex play. The problem is I don't think he's reliable, right? So he's just a guy who you're going in hoping that he carves out a every week role that he is reliable in. I think what happened with him, if I look at the numbers, and it's not 100% accurate what I'm about to say, but it's got some accuracy to it. It seems like as he started getting more touches, his efficiency after a while started to wane a little. Maybe, just took a toll. Maybe he just wasn't used to it, right? Like here's a guy who probably hasn't even gotten a whole bunch of touches since college, especially. And then, it's now the NFL level. The hits are harder. The aches and pains last longer. So I get it. And maybe this year he'll be able to handle that better. His body will be in better shape, but it still seems like he's capped. And it seems like a lot of these games where he got like a lot of touches were kind of blowout games. So that kind of scares me, right? Like, not all of them. There were games that seemed like pretty close or just high scoring where he also got like a lot of looks. But if you look at it, a lot of games with the double digits, Jacksonville, they blew out, New Orleans, San Fran, all blowouts, really high touches there. Arizona, high touches blowout. And then in a few close games, he had Detroit, Seattle, and then Arizona again, blowout. So basically only 2 games where he had double digits were now blowouts. So that's a little bit scary, right? Especially if we think the Rams defense is going to be elite. That offense should continue to be elite, even if it's not at the same level. If we don't believe it's going to be at the same level, but potentially it can be. Their schedule's going to be tougher, sure. But, they still play the Cardinals twice, right? They still play Carolina, the Saints, right? Like, these are teams that, well, I don't know if they play the Saints actually this year. So we'll see what happens. So what round was he, you said? 120 and 107, so end of the 10th.
Yeah, end
And,
of 9th, end of 10th.
and yeah, I mean, you can't argue those ADPs. The ADPs are on point. Those are really good ADPs. I'll definitely buy those ADPs, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to take that next step. And it is scary in terms of looking at the usage that a lot of high volume games were in blowout games.
Other guys in that vicinity, running backs in that vicinity, Rashad White, Monangai, Bill, Jordan Mason, Tajay Spears, Charbonnet. I think I take Corum and Mason, probably those two, squarely ahead of everyone else there. Maybe White in a PPR gets in that conversation. Bill, the jury's out on. So, I think physically he's the one guy who can stand up to the pounding in this range other than Mason. And I think he's in a better offense. So I think his ADP is, I would buy this ADP.
Yeah, Corum and Mason, and depending, what info we get on Charbonnet before drafts happen, maybe him as well. But yeah, everybody else doesn't belong in that same category, in my opinion, at this point in time. So yeah, I agree with you there.
All right, so let's go to Puka Nacua. His PPR ADP is 3. His standard ADP is 4. Been one of the best wide receivers in the league since he came in as a late round draft pick. Pretty astonishing rise for him. I think his ADP is fair. I think that, we talked about a little bit the risks already as far as the various pitfalls that he could encounter, both health wise and in terms of his personal life. I think I would take Jamar Chase ahead of him, but I think he's right there after that. The big question is, do you take him or JSN, who we're going to talk about later in this video? We can talk about that then or now, I don't know. But I think right after Chase is my number 2 wide receiver. I'm happy with him. Some ADPs have him actually ahead of Chase, and I'm just not on board with that because of all of the outs that I mentioned, all of the risks that I mentioned.
Yeah, so the ADP I got for Puka, the place I get my ADPs for these videos, so he's the first receiver off the board in both. So to me, that's the only reason these numbers are an overdraft.
This is Fantasy Football Calculator, right?
Yes. Thank you.
Right,
we link it under our videos now if people want to check it closer to the draft, because as I said, it's just the current week's ADPs, so they obviously change. But yeah, so to me, that's crazy. Puka has an injury history. I'll go with Jamar Chase ahead of him, and I would probably go with JSN ahead of him. Chase, because I just think he's elite. He doesn't have the injury concerns. That offense, I know, is just going to be throwing. Even if they're winning, they'll still get Chase Brown involved enough, but they'll still be throwing. Lots of weapons, just like in the Rams offense, but the Rams offense, I think, likes to spread it around. Now, it's hard to argue what Puka's done since he came to the league, right? Like 160 targets twice. The other season, he had, 105 targets. And again, he's played 16 and 17 games in those 160 plus target seasons, so it's hard to call him injury prone, but he always gets nicked up, it feels like, right? Like, I don't know. I just think it's too high. Just because Chase, to me, is definitely better than him, or a guy I'm drafting better than him. That could be completely bad take, completely wrong take, but I'm just going to do it. So that's the only reason I'm going to sell these ADPs. Otherwise, it's very hard to make any kind of argument against him.
I agree. And I think his play style, too, puts him in danger of missing time. Like, he takes huge, ferocious hits. It's one of the things that makes him great, but he has such a physical style, and he doesn't have the top end speed. He's fast, but he doesn't have the top end speed of Chase, where he can avoid some of those hits. So yeah, I mean, you're happy with either guy, but if given the choice, I take Chase all day. So
Yeah. And plus, keep an eye out on whether he gets suspended, because there's still talk that the NFL might still suspend him.
that's right.
So, again, depending on when you're listening to this video, he might be suspended, or, the suspension stuff might still be up in the air. So just something to consider.
Absolutely. All right. So now let's talk about his running mate, the venerated one, Davante Adams, PPR ADP of 42, standard ADP of 35. I think that puts him in round 3 or round 4, depending on PPR or standard. I think I'm selling this ADP just because I think that the discrepancy between his yardage and his touchdowns make his point total unsustainable. So last year he had only 789 yards, but he had 14 touchdowns. I don't think that that's likely to repeat. Maybe his yardage improves a little bit, but he's getting up there in years, and just a phenomenal receiver, fantastic talent, but not worth the investment at that price. Let's see who's going around that area. I think we're talking about guys like Jameson Williams, Ladd McConkey, T. Higgins a little earlier than that, Jalen Waddle. I really like Waddle at that ADP a little bit later than Adams. So, and ultimately he's still the wide receiver 2 in this offense, as good as it is. So, so I think I will sell this ADP.
Yeah. Before I get into him, did you just say venerated? He's a venerated veteran?
Yes. I may have used the wrong word there. What should I have
No,
said?
you used the word is right, but it's quite a big adjective.
Oh, I see. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I always forget that, it's a bit much for you, and I got to dumb it down a little. My apologies.
I mean, not just for me. I would hope that some of the fans that we bring in.
Oh, no. The listeners and viewers, they're operating at a very high level. So I'm not worried about them, but my apologies to you.
The problem is, this is one of the reasons that we can't get MJ to watch the pod. It's too, right. We're trying to get the kind of lower rung of the community into this, but you're not allowing us with words like venerated. It's just, you're not giving us a chance. You're not giving us a chance.
Yeah, sorry.
But yes, Davante Adams. So yeah, 42nd basically in PPR, 35th in standard. I mean, I'm paying for what he did last year, which is score 1 billion touchdowns. 14 touchdowns. I'm not going to pay for that. Never in my life will I pay for a guy to score 14 touchdowns again. He had under 800 yards. Like, what am I? Yeah, I'm selling this. It's nothing against Davante. It's just, if I'm expecting the same thing this year, but in terms of receiving and yardage, I'm also expecting way less TDs. So that's going to lower his value to me. 7th round maybe sounds right. I don't know. Where would you take him? Middle of the 4th is insane.
It's way too high. Yeah. I think 7th round is good. I think also that if you're in a smart, savvy league, they're going to look at these totals and come to the same conclusion that we are. I mean, not everyone has our insight, obviously, very few do, but many people can look at that yardage total and touchdown total and say, okay, this is, for a guy in his 30s, this is probably not sustainable. So he's going to fall. And the question is, how far does he fall before he becomes a value? And I think if you can get him in the, let's see, around pick 60, 62 is Cortland Sutton, 64 Alec Pierce. I would much rather have Davante over those guys, right? You'd probably take him over Parker Washington, who's in that range. I'd probably take him over DK Metcalf just because it's a better offense and, more prolific passing attack. So if he falls down to that range, then I'm thinking about him. So that's late 6th or certainly early 7th. Then he's in play.
Yeah, I also want to say I'm not fully against Parker Washington. I don't hate it. I just don't think he should be rising as high as he is. That's all I'm saying.
Fair enough. No more side quests. Yeah. I can see.
No, I love side quests. Love them. I just want you to understand. I don't want you to spread the word that I'm like a Parker Washington hater. By no means.
I won't. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you. All right. I think we're good with Davante, or we want to keep talking about
I think we're good. I think, though, that we have some breaking news that unfortunately I think we have to address here. I know it's
No, what's
not
going on?
NFC West, but
Jeanty hurt. Oh no,
yes,
Jeanty. Damn it.
really
I'm sorry.
awful.
You shouldn't have
Ashton
told me
Jeanty
breaking
hurt
news.
in practice, could not put pressure on his leg when leaving the field. Just horrible sounding news. I hope that this isn't the case. I hope that if you have Mike Washington in your queue, you're moving him up, but we'll wait. I'm sure Adam's all over the breaking news. When he's not in the blue tent, he's on it.
I hope so.
Yeah, he's like the Adam Schefter. Adam Schefter was his original name, actually. And so he'll be on top of this. So stay tuned to BCP to get your full updates. But this is not good. This is not good.
No, and then for future reference, don't say breaking news around me because you see what I did? I jumped you for the breaking news there. So just say I have to interrupt. I don't want to, it's your
Okay.
breaking news. I don't want to jump. But yeah, it's crazy. They said
I hope
couldn't
that's
put
not
pressure
true.
on the leg. I don't know how much I was just reading while you were talking, so it's not that I was ignoring you. But yeah, no pressure on the leg. Wow, that sounds bad, right? Knee injury. But yeah, I mean, we were just talking about Mike Washington in our previous video, and I love the dude. So I wonder what this does to
He
him.
looks great. Yeah.
Let's say Jeanty's out for the year potentially, right? I wonder what that does to his actually rookie draft value. That'll be interesting.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, we have to move off the side.
He might be the number 2 running back, the number 3 running back in the class then, in the rookie class. I think he would move ahead of Coleman, but would still be behind Price and Love, I think.
Yeah. So I have a question since we are on this. So let's say I'm going to give you a scenario, right? PPR dynasty, you have, let's say Jadarian Price goes third in a PPR, right? Because people are now down on Tyson. So we have Love, we have Tate, and let's say Price is now the third guy. The fourth pick, would you take Tyson or potentially Mike Washington now or Lemon?
I probably take Lemon followed by Tyson and then Washington. And I do that just because although this is scary, let's say, I hope I'm not right, but let's say Jeanty's out for the year or half the year. Okay. What am I getting from Washington then? He's, yes, he's looked good in the preseason. Yes, he has good measurables, but the production profile wasn't great. He wasn't drafted super high. He's going to go right back to the number 2 role once Jeanty is back. And it's not a great offense. So, I'm buying him to try and flip him. I don't know. I'd rather just invest in a long-term asset. And I think both Lemon and Tyson are good prospects and will be a better asset long-term. So for dynasty, that's what I would do.
Okay. And again, I know this isn't the topic. So as you talked it out, it made me think, so then why would Jonah Coleman not go ahead of him? I actually have that pick. That's why I asked you. So I don't know what
go
I'm
ahead of
do.
Washington.
Yeah. I mean, because Washington is there only for a year at best, right? Let's say, because Jeanty's going to be back. So why am I buying Washington ahead of a Jonah Coleman who might be there longer and, actually have more value longer?
He might. I mean, although his rookie year was frustrating, I don't think they're going to just give up on RJ Harvey in Denver. And I think it could be, Sean Payton also likes to use 7 running backs. So, who knows? He might bring back Audric Estime. I think he's on the Saints now. Like he's throwing out a new name every 2 weeks. So I don't fully trust him to commit to one guy. He might if he had like a, first or second round talent. And Coleman is good, but I don't think he's there. He's like a complete solid back, but I don't think he has the top end speed or elusiveness to really be that guy.
But he also went late, right? So he might also suck.
But you make a good argument. Like I could go either way, Washington or Coleman. I'd have to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I actually wanted Washington to go earlier because in our dynasty where I have the second pick, I thought Washington was by far the second best running back. But, you make a great point. He went really late, right? So even everything he did in the combine and all that. And again, we're sorry to the viewers for kind of sidetracking here. But,
Adam can break this out into a separate video.
He doesn't need to break it out. Leave it alone. It's good conversation. But yeah, so like Washington, I thought was great. But, like you said, he was a 4th round pick. All right. I think that's where he went 4th round. So, obviously the teams didn't like him, but so was Coleman. So to me, both of them maybe are not even worth going. Maybe Casey Concepcion is actually better than both of them, right? Even though he's got his own question marks and reply. Anyway, yeah, I was just wondering. I have the 4th pick. That's why I'm asking. That's going to be, at this point, I'm in a way hoping that a price falls to me. But at the same time, it's a 3 receiver.
Terrence Ferguson has a PPR ADP of 163. He has no standard ADP. I am buying. I think this guy is going to be a breakout tight end star. I'm very high on this guy. He is another like small sample size guy. I know that we had this conversation about Colson Loveland, and this is even worse from a small sample size perspective. But I think the kinds of routes he runs, the way he runs his routes, and the way they deployed him was very exciting. This team needs pass catchers. We talked about how fragile the Puka Devontae situation is, and I think he's really the number 3 receiver on this team. I don't think there's anyone who's going to challenge him for that. Tyler Higbee is on his last legs. They've got these other tight ends, Davis Allen and Colby Parkinson and these guys, but none of them have the speed or the explosiveness of Ferguson, and they've been talking this guy up. Plus, McVay was the one who has sort of started this whole trend of multiple tight end sets and using tight ends in this way. So he is my favorite sort of sleeper, and I would buy this ADP.
So I'm going to sell this ADP. I'm going to sell all of their tight ends. I know he's the only one that we have an ADP on, and it's only a PPR. And my reasoning is, first of all, he's still listed as 3rd on depth chart. So he's got a lot of climbing to the... Sure, maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Who wrote the depth chart? An intern?
Who wrote it? I don't know. ESPN. I have no idea. But I'm just going by what it is. And again, they have 4 tight ends. They drafted another one in Max Clare. And so we haven't even seen him play yet. But they have Higbee. They have Parkinson, Ferguson, all these guys they use. Parkinson led the room with 56 targets and 408 yards. Your boy Ferguson had 25 targets for 230 yards. Higbee had 36 targets for 180 yards. They combine for a lot of TDs. And that's what I think, you're going to be hoping for from these tight ends, is to find the one who's going to have the 8 TDs that Parkinson had last year. And why can't it be Parkinson again? That's why, to me, these tight ends are a void until we're in season and we see what that actual, progression from Stafford is. Is it going to be Ferguson, taking the step and becoming the number 1 tight end? It's possible. Yes. He seemed very exciting, very good, very interesting, but they just spread it around so much. And they add another tight end to the room. To me, I just don't see how I could possibly draft any tight end from here. Will I be using or looking to use any of them in the regular season, for either bye weeks or injury replacements? Sure, I'll look towards them if there's like somebody coming on. But until I actually see a clearer picture, I can't draft any of these dudes.
I have to call you out here. I think that the 163 ADP may be fake news. I think you may have been looking up Jake Ferguson's ADP. Terrence Ferguson's ADP is 224 on Fantasy Football Calculator, which is basically undrafted in PPR.
No. In PPR, Terrence Ferguson, I'm looking straight at him, 163. Are you in PPR?
I'm in PPR.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you want me to share my screen? I promise you, he's here. PPR, average draft possession, 12 teams, 2026. Terrence Ferguson, 163. Jake Ferguson is 133.6.
Huh. This is Fantasy Football Calculator?
FantasyFootballCalculator.com.
Well, yes,
do you have the .com?
I do. Yeah.
Maybe you're on .net. I don't know.
No. 12 teams, 2026.
2026. Tight ends. Data from August 16th through August 23rd. That's what I'm looking at, sir.
Oh, I see what it is. So I'm looking, if you look at the overall ADP, it's different than when you click on tight end. So if you click on all, it's different than if you just click tight end. I don't know which is more accurate, but
I just go by position.
That's what it is. Yeah. Okay. But fair enough. So, but assuming that that's right, who else are you going to get with this kind of upside that late in the draft? I mean, you're talking about
Dalton Schultz,
the very last round.
Dalton Schultz. I'll take him all day over Ferguson, and he's going behind him in PPR.
I think he's a floor play, not a ceiling play. He might be a little bit better.
Schultz?
Yes.
Whoa. Did you see his numbers last year? Yeah. Do you know
Yeah,
his
but
numbers from last year?
look at those yards compared to the rest of his career. I think it was a broken offense, and he's a
They
catch and
just
fall
lost
down guy.
Higgins. They just yeah, so
Yeah,
they just lost Higgins.
you're right. He'll get a few more targets, but I don't think he's gonna have the kind of upside that a Ferguson would have. He's a
Why?
good
He's
floor
done it
play.
before. Dalton Schultz did it before. He had 800 yards with the Cowboys in 21. He had almost 800 last year. I mean, Dalton Schultz. I'll definitely take Dalton Schultz, who is now the number 2 receiver on that team, over a guy who's third on the depth chart and who's going to be like praying, basically. Maybe not praying, but begging for targets each game. Again, if once we see like how the progression of targets actually works out in the Rams offense, you might be absolutely right, and might be looking like a dummy. But I have to see it first, right? Coming in, I can't possibly tell you that that Dalton Schultz is the worse pick than Ferguson.
If you got to see it, you're going to be late, man. You can't always see
Maybe
everything.
that is true.
Sometimes you got to take a chance. You got to do your homework and see how they want to use this guy, what they're saying, how they're scheming him up, how they're changing the offense. I think it's all set up for him in a way
Okay.
that Schultz could never dream of. But you're right. Schultz is a good, nice, safe floor play. And so if you're,
Well,
you want your security blanket, Dalton Schultz is there for you.
Well, I hope we're still doing this after the season and we recall this conversation and come back to it, and we can actually,
We should.
one of us will owe the other an apology, hopefully, or we might both be completely wrong or completely right. We'll see where it goes, and we'll be shaking each other's hands virtually. But this is something to look back on in January. But you're absolutely right. Sometimes you got to look ahead, and I am looking ahead, and to me, that's why I can't take the Tardens Ferguson dive at this price, or at any price really.
Fair enough. All right. Well, I think that wraps up the Rams. Do you want to take us to the creme de la creme, the team with 5 Super Bowl championships, none in 30 years, but we won't talk about that.
Do
San
I want
Francisco
to?
49ers. Yeah.
No, I don't want to, because I feel like this is just going to be a glaze party on your end. But
Boy. No,
but I'm going
there's
to have to do it anyway.
objectivity.
Yeah, I'm going
The
to have to
same
do it
level of
anyway. So
objectivity
yeah,
you brought to your New York Giants, I will do that for the 49ers.
I can't promise I was very objective there, but sure, let's do it. Yeah, so the Niners, we're going to start with Mr. Purdy, Mr. Relevant himself. 80, basically 88 through 88, 89 and ADP. That's a round 8, early round 8 kind of pick. And to me, I like Purdy as a quarterback, but to me, I just think that's early because his weapons are all old and injured and unknown. So I know Purdy is going to be an efficient, real NFL quarterback. I really have no problems with him in that sense. But I'm gonna have to pass on this ADP. That's too early. I feel I'm gonna have very solid options either around him or even later in the draft. He's going ahead of a lot of really good names: Caleb, Lawrence, Goff, Mahomes, Herbert, Nick, Start, just to name a few. That's like in PPR and standard. He's going ahead of basically the same guys. So yeah. So to me, I can't buy in on a per.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, just top down look at this team. The offensive line has been shaky, and they continue to sort of think they can scheme around it or use smoke and mirrors. And so the protection is not going to be great. The targets, the pass catchers are getting old, as you said, and getting, they've made it even older by bringing back Devo and Mike Evans, we'll talk about. And I just think that, the fantasy football analyst community has swung back and forth on Purdy. They trashed him unnecessarily when he first started out. And now, to use your word, that the kids they're glazing him. I'm seeing him being talked about as a top 10 quarterback, really solid guy, underrated guy. He's good. He's fine, but there's no way I'm taking him above Caleb Williams, Trevor Lawrence, probably not above Jared Goff, not above Mahomes, not above Herbert. All of those guys are listed below him in ADP right now. Maybe I take Purdy over Nix or Dart, but even that is a tough decision for me. So I'm selling this ADP. Good player, being overdrafted.
Yeah, what round do you think he should be going?
Let's see. I would
He's
probably
currently
take
early
him
eights.
early 8. I would take him around 10.
Okay, fair enough. All right. Well, next man up is T-Mac. Maybe future Hall of Famer. I feel like he's probably a future Hall of Famer, right? He would have to be. So he is currently going 6.5 in PPR, 7 in standard. So that's I don't want to. I'm not going to take too much time, but I've made my case against C-Mac. He's coming off a career high in touches. Anytime he's done that, he has gotten injured immediately. Played very little amount of games. The Niners have more travel yards this year than any other team. So there's just a lot of scary teams. So for me, I'm just trying to avoid C-Mac. So I'm definitely not buy him here. And, if he's there for me, like let's say early second, which he probably will not be, I don't see how it happens, then I could see myself grabbing him. But otherwise, he's just too scary.
So you're a running back guy, and so I'm curious, like where, like would you take any receivers over him? Are you taking Puka, Chase, JSN, or Amon-Ra over Christian McCaffrey?
I'll take all those guys ahead of him.
Okay. As
I
a
want to do.
running back guy, you would still, you don't trust him. Obviously, I guess you would take Jonathan Taylor over him, James Cook
Of
over him.
course.
Yeah. Okay.
I wanna say that I just don't want him. I don't want him, right? Like when I'm drafting, I'm on the clock, I might do something different last year. I kind of like didn't want to take him either in my redraft. And the guy in front of me, like my goal was I was 8th, I think, or 9th, something like that. And my goal was to get Henry. The guy in front of me took Henry. So, and then, it's different when you actually look at who's left as opposed to like coming in saying this, I'm avoiding this dude at all costs. So I was kind of saying I'm avoiding C-Mac at all costs. But then once Henry went and I was looking at what's left, I kind of had no choice but to take C-Mac. Can that situation arise again this year? Possible, but it'll take a much uglier board of
how did that team do last year?
Title, right?
So
right.
I mean,
but he wasn't coming off a career high in carries, right? Like
True.
he was actually coming off an injured season.
Yeah.
So in terms of like what the stats tell us, in terms of what my mind is telling me, that actually made sense. That's why maybe I had less hesitancy to actually grab him there. That's why I'm saying this year, I think knowing what I know, him after the, not playing seasons after the career highs and them having so many travel yards, more than anybody else by far, just
they have the trip to Australia, so they're going to win that contest no matter what because of week 1 in Australia. But I hear you. Yeah, they have a lot of travel.
I think even outside of that, they still have like 1 million travel yards. Like maybe even if you take Australia away, they still have like the most travel yards. So
I think the travel is always usually San Francisco or Seattle, just because they're like further away from everything. But I hear your point.
Well, now that you have the two LA teams, I guess it makes it a little better, right?
Yeah. That's true. Yeah, so maybe this is being too cute, but I would sell this ADP in standard, but I would buy it in PPR because I think that as he ages, they're going to use him more and more as a receiving back, especially with all the question marks amidst the pass catchers that we talked about. I think they say this every year, but I do think they want to integrate other running backs more in the early downs. And so I think they're going to use him more as a pass catching back. And so his PPR upside, he's a phenomenal receiver and his PPR upside is still great. But I think, his rushing metrics were not great last year. And part of that was the offensive line, but I don't think the offensive line is going to be much better. So I think the pass catching upside is what keeps him in the mix on a PPR basis for me. But for standard, I'm selling this ADP. I feel similarly to you. Some of it is just like, how do you want to play? Like, if you are a risk averse person, do not take him, because it is stomach churning. You have a franchise that like guards secrets, like they're the Chinese Communist Party. They don't give you any information. Even today there was bullshit about like, oh, he came back to practice and there was a press conference. They said, well, what about this tightness? He said, there's no tightness. I always plan to take time off in the middle of training camp, like a, sort of like a LeBron type situation where he just like disappears for a while. And it's like, well, why the hell did the team say that then? Right. So,
Yeah.
so this is my team. I complain about them. This sort of like guarding state secrets when it comes to injury information is part of my frustration with them. So if you're risk averse and if you've got a gastric ulcer, to put my white coat on for a second, I do not recommend drafting Christian McCaffrey. But, if your stomach is solid, if you can handle it, if your blood pressure is low, 120s over 70s, go ahead and take him. You'll be all right.
Yeah, I just look at those carries and then I look at the year after and it's just very, very scary. But yeah, you're 100% right. So that takes us to maybe a guy who everybody should be taking, Jordan James, who has an ADP of 144 in PPR, no standard ADP. So 144 is the last pick in the 12th round. So he's basically end up 12, early 13. So the only thing I don't like is that the fact that it might not be him, it might be Kalen Black. But otherwise, I'm all for taking one of these guys, if not maybe even both, right? Because I just explained, I think C-Mac is going to go down. He's going to be useless, but that's still a Shanahan offense. I know the Shanahan offense is always fantasy goodness. So I definitely want the running back there that's going to be getting the majority of touches. So until I actually know which guy that is, I'm just going to say I'm buying both of their ADPs and we'll get to Kalen Black. But if, you're watching this or you're drafting when there is an actual answer to who the number 2 back is, that's obviously the guy to take. And, their ADP to me is never too high as long as it's like within, after 9th round or later. I think if you're taking a Niners backup 9th round or later, you're doing okay. As long as it's the actual backup.
Yeah. So the problem is you may not know, right? So Jordan James was injured. He was banged up and just came back to practice literally today or yesterday. Kalen Black has looked pretty good in his stead, but he missed time with injury also. I mean, every San Francisco player gets injured, right? So I think it's hard to know. I am concerned that Jordan James either could not stay healthy or could not get on the field at all last year until the second half of a blowout playoff loss in Seattle. Like he literally had no carries all year until the season was effectively over. That's concerning to me. And to say that guy is going to be anointed the number 2 is a little worrisome to me. So even though there is some upside there, I would sell this ADP on the assumption that if CMC goes down, he's not going to get the role to himself. He'll have to share it with Black, and he's less likely to stay healthy than Black, in my opinion, because he's already had a fair number of injuries and is a small guy. So I'm selling this ADP. Other guys who are going around there are Woody Marks, Tyler Algier, Chris Rodriguez, Jonah Coleman, the aforementioned. I'd probably take all those guys.
Okay, fair. But both of them are the exact same size. The only difference between them is Black was a 3rd round pick in a pretty awful draft, and James was a 5th round pick in last year's draft. Doesn't mean that Black isn't better. Doesn't mean they're equal, but the size is exactly the same. At least the way they're listed. So yeah, I agree with you. But to me, I'm just saying, it's really about who the second guy is just because of that offense, right? So like, I just want to have a piece of that offense if that man is up. If CMC is playing, then all these guys are irrelevant, of course. We know that. So that can move us to Kalen Black, who has a 160 ADP. And I think same conversation, right? It's just if, he is listed as second on the depth chart right now, ahead of Jordan James, but like you said, Jordan James was hurt longer than Kalen Black. Maybe that's what it is, or maybe there's actually a changing of the guard. So yeah, I mean, I'll buy whoever the number 2 is. If neither guy's a number 2, and you can get these guys in like the 14, 15 round of your drafts, and you like one better than the other, all glory to you. I don't hate it. Just take them.
Fair enough. Yeah. I don't have too much to say about Black. I mean, he was probably horribly overdrafted. Wasn't even invited to the combine and then goes in the 3rd round. No one had him on their board going anywhere near this. Shanahan does this every year, overdrafts a running back. Most of them flame out. Occasionally they're good. Black might be good. I mean, he comes from a good system. He looked good at Indiana. He's looked good in the preseason for what it's worth. So I think I would have a little more faith in him winning the number 2 job over Jordan James. He seems a little sturdier. He doesn't catch as many passes. But I think I would probably buy this ADP at 160. It's not a huge risk. If you have to cut him, so be it. The other guys going around him are all significant question marks as well. Guys like James Conner, who we talked about before, Keaton Mitchell, Brian Robinson, Emmett Johnson, Najee. So, I think he's a fine flyer to take around this time. Some of the other guys I mentioned, though, are a little bit safer and more established.
I'd probably take Keaton Mitchell ahead of those guys, but yeah, otherwise I don't hate Kendall Black as the other guy. All right, so now we move on to Mike Evans, another old man on the old man team. Basically, I guess they're not that old, right? You have young backs out behind C-Mac. Purdy's not that old, but Evans is really old. So he is going 53.5 and 52.5. That's 53 PPR, 52 in standard. And that's basically the middle to early fifth round. And I'm going to sell both of these. Also, kind of breaking news. Mike Evans left practice for precautionary reasons, but he's also been injured or nicked up a whole off season or a whole training camp.
Yeah.
So that's my worry, right? With a guy who's constantly injured. He's now 33 years old. And again, he's going to be sitting on that plane for a long, long time. The Niners in general, whether it's the substation blues, whatever it is, just always have injury problems. So I don't think Mike Evans, a guy who's old, injury prone, and I don't know what to expect. I respect Mike Evans and what he's done in his career, but I just don't think I can draft him that early. He's a guy who belongs to me closer to the 7th round, potentially later, depending what's there for me. But 7th round seems safer. I think, in the 5th round, I'm going to be able to get much higher upside talent still.
Yeah, I agree. I'm selling this too. I think that the ceiling case is like the Devontae Adams season, where he sucks up a bunch of red zone targets and end zone targets and gets a lot of touchdowns, but the yardage has started to dip a little bit for his career. The other guys that you can take instead in that range, Odunze, Watson, Christian Watson, Burden, Sutton, Pierce, Parker Washington. DJ Moore goes a little earlier. I'm not crazy about Sutton or Pierce, obviously, but most of the rest of those guys I would rather take a chance on over Evan. So yeah, I can see the ceiling case, but the injury risk is significant. I worry about it too, and he's already been back.
Yeah, I actually just got an alert. We've hit the maximum allotment on Parker Washington mentions in this pod. So please,
okay. All right.
So please, enough.
We'll stop.
It's you. It's all you. All right, moving on to Parker Washington Light, Deebo Samuel over here. You like that? It doesn't make sense, but I still threw it in there. Yeah,
right. It doesn't make sense.
It doesn't, right?
No, it doesn't.
Or it does. Good. All right. I just wanted to throw it in there. Anyway, Deebo Samuel, 112.5 in PPR, 96.5 in standard. So that's 10th round in PPR and 8th, late 8th, early 9th in standard. So they're talking up Deebo that they're going to start using him like they did before, like from the backfield, this and that. And, the amount of weapons they don't have actually makes Deebo interesting. I would take him in PPR. The 8th, 9th round's a little early in standard, but I like where he is in PPR. That 10th round, I could see myself grabbing him both in standard and PPR in 10th rounds just because they kind of lack weapons. And, if I am expecting C-Mac to go down, then, that'll only put more on the plate of these receivers. So I like Deebo there. It's not sexy. It's not, it's not like high upside type of pick, but it might be a safe pick, right? He knows that offense. He's had success there before. He didn't look completely washed last year. Me, you, and Alex talked about this in an earlier pod. So yeah, I like him in that 10th round in both standard and PPR if he fell there. So selling standard, I'm good with the PPR.
Well, I think Deebo sued me for defamation when I said on an earlier video that he belongs on his couch, not on a roster. And here he is throwing egg in my face. So I got to be consistent. I got to sell him at these ADPs. I think he's not bad. I think he'll be a good real life player. I think he'll help the team, help the offense, help with different formations and allow them to do some misdirection and do some things that they might not have been able to do otherwise. But I think in terms of actual fantasy production, the receivers that I can get around that range in PPR are Xavier Worthy, Romeo Dobbs, Mekhi Lemon, Tyson, who's hurt, Concepcion. I think I would take all of those guys except for Tyson because of the injury. So, I just don't think they can talk a big game about what they want to do with him. And he is in good shape. I said it before that sometimes he comes into camp totally out of shape and then has problems. He is apparently in great shape right now, which is good. But I just don't think he can hold up to the kind of, pounding that it would take for him to produce at a level that makes him fantasy relevant. I think they're going to use him, spot situations, almost like a gadget guy here or there. And that's not going to be enough volume to matter for fantasy.
So where would you actually feel comfortable taking him if he fell to you? Or
So
you
these
just
ADPs
completely
are
passing?
like round 8 and round 10. I think I'd probably take him like round 12 to 13, something, down.
Yeah, I mean,
That's down like with the Rashid Shaheed and Keenan Allen and Jerry Judy. Yeah, I'd take him over those guys.
yeah. I mean, a lot of the guys you said were like really, really ugly. Like where he's going around, Concepcion might be the only one I agree with. But yeah, that's fine. I mean, if you look at his numbers last year, he was still pretty solid. He played the 2 receiver role, which I guess is what he's going to be this year, right? So for that, his numbers at the end of the day were solid. So to me, I think you're underselling him a little, but I understand it. As a hater, self-hater and Niners hater, I can understand why you're doing this to them.
Self-loathing is the term. Thank you. Thank you very
Self-loathing.
much. Yeah.
Look at it. Yes.
Who's next? Who do we
Yes.
got next?
Oh, okay. I was going to say, see how educational our pods are? Not only do you learn about fantasy, but you learn about terms as well. Stripling. Dijon Stripling. That's a next man up. He's currently
Get in the
138.
strip club. Yes.
I like, yeah. What was the name you gave?
Strip
You gave
club.
some kind of
yeah.
name suggestion.
If you
wasn't it a
draft,
combination?
you have to draft Klubnik also, and then you can have
Yes,
strip
that was
club
it.
as your team name. That's what
That's what it was. Pretty good. I like him on it.
Thank you.
So, strip.
What do you think
Oh,
of this
go
guy?
ahead. Well, let me tell people where he's going first. You're just pushing here. Jeez, very, very antsy.
You gotta move it along.
138.
Move it along.
I think you just want to talk about him. You're super excited by him. That's what it feels like.
Maybe.
So 138.8 in PPR, 132 in standards. So that puts him round 12 in the middle of round 12 in PPR, and the 132 end of the 11th round in standard. So he's interesting. I think, he's a guy who could take on the Juwan Johnson role from 2 years ago, even from last year. And that was a very fantasy friendly role. So if, we were all wrong and we all have egg on our face for making fun of the Niners for taking this dude who was supposed to be like a 7th rounder or something, right? And they're going to turn him into the new Juwan Johnson. Boy, are we all going to feel silly. And if he is the new Juwan Johnson, then these ADPs are amazing. Like I'll take this all day, every day. So I'm going to actually give it to you before I say whether I'm buying or selling, because I want to know if you actually think this guy can and will be the next Juwan Johnson from a homer take and a guy who's local. Maybe you have some local info.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I think he is a Juwan Jennings plus because I think he has more speed than a Juwan Jennings.
Juwan Johnson. Who's Juwan Jennings?
Juwan Jennings was a 49ers wide receiver. Juwan Johnson is a tight end for the New Orleans Saints.
Yes, was I saying Jennings before or Jonathan? What was I saying?
You went back and forth. You went back and forth.
Jeez.
And then you tried to correct
everybody.
me, which you should never, ever do because this is how it turns out. Right?
You know what? So first of all, let me apologize to everybody. It is Juwan Jennings. Manu is completely right. First of all. Second of all, after Alex gave you that C, I think I stopped respecting you. And that's why I'm trying to correct you now.
Man. Yeah. Respect is hard earned, I guess, and easily lost.
Easily lost.
So Stribling, yeah, I like everyone else in the Bay Area on draft day, shouted a bunch of expletives when his name was called at the draft. There was some late buzz that he was moving up, but certainly not to like the second pick of the 3rd round or second round. Wherever he was picked was about a round earlier than anyone had predicted. He wasn't a 7th round pick, but he was certainly overdrafted like Kalen Black. So, this is the 49ers MO. And so I think everyone was curious to see, can this guy play at all? There's nothing that he has done from what I'm reading and seeing in the preseason that is negative. Like everything has been positive. the thing with Shanahan is that he's extremely tough on receivers. Because he used to be a terrible receiver and knows what terrible receivers look like. And so he has no gumption about like putting a guy in the doghouse and just leaving him there until their career goes off track. Guys like Dante Pettis, even Ricky Pearsall early on, and Brandon Ayuk were in the doghouse at the beginning. Ayuk, of course, ended up in the doghouse at the end too. So he's very hard on receivers and, is really a technician as far as like, how do they run the routes? All the nuances of how they run the routes. Do they know the offense? Can they block? Like he expects a lot out of his receivers, and some say to an unrealistic level. And so he will prop up a guy, even if they don't have top end physical talents, if they check off all the other boxes. And I think that's what we have with Stribling. And so, is he ever going to be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy? No chance. But he's going to be, I think, in the wide receiver 3 discussion and has wide receiver 2 upside. So I'm buying this ADP all day. And, he's got an old folks home surrounding him. So there's the opportunity to get more playing time. So yeah, I'm excited about him from a fantasy perspective.
All right, very nice. So this is time for another side quest. I know we're going long here, so I hope you're okay with this. I'm not bothering you too much with these side quests, but so maybe the conversation in a dynasty rookie draft, it should be instead of a Mike Washington or instead of a Jonah Coleman or even a Lemon, maybe a Stribling is moving up. And should he go ahead of any of these dudes now?
I think he's a late first rounder, approaching mid first rounder. I can't move him ahead of Lemon at this point. I mean, Lemon is just a much more heralded prospect and is going to be definitely the wide receiver two in that offense the minute he's healthy and ready to go. And he just returned to practice yesterday. So I can't put him ahead of Lemon, but as a receiver, he might be right behind.
Well, let's say he's sixth. Would you put him sixth? Let's say you have Lemon, Tate, Love, Price, and Tyson. Let's say those are still the top 5.
Yeah.
Who's sixth? Is he better than a Coleman, a Washington, a KC, maybe?
I think in a PPR, I put him 6. In a standard, I probably put him 7 behind Coleman.
Wow, that high though. Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Yeah. Because who else am I talking about? I'm talking about guys like,
well, KC's there, Joan is there,
Concepcion,
possibly.
But it's
Mike
a
Washington,
horrible
possibly.
offense. I put him ahead of Washington. I think Concepcion, actually Concepcion, I put ahead of him. Yeah.
So
Casey's, I still think is a superior talent, and I put him ahead, and then Stribling after that. But I'm comfortable putting him ahead of like Boston or Bernard or Stowers or, Mendoza in a 1 quarterback. So I have no problem putting him in kind of like the last third of the first round. What about you?
Yeah. Yeah. I think again, he's moving up, right? So I love me a running back. So I think I have to see what happens with Jonah in this last game, because his second game was not as good as his first. He did not look very good. He's still a 4th round pick, right? So to me, he's still kind of not that interesting. But
you're still putting Washington ahead of Stribling, right?
No,
you're not.
I can't.
Only if Jeanty is out, or even then, no.
Well, if Jeanty's healthy, then of course not. Washington's like 2nd rounder probably in a dynasty league, if not even later. If Jeanty's out, yeah, Stribling is tough. Stribling is a tough call because he is very interesting. Because if he is in that Jawan Jennings role, that's really valuable. You know what I mean? Like Jennings had a really solid fantasy season. And what's to say he can't get better, right? Like Pearsall, I feel is like, who knows? Evans is not going to be there long. Kittle's not going to be there long. So Stribling technically is pretty close to being a number 1 receiver on the Niners, maybe by next year or maybe in 2 years, right? And why can't he be? I know you said he's not going to be a receiver 1 this year, probably not, but at some point he might be. Right? I mean, it's possible. He's a 2nd round receiver. So, and we've seen plenty of 2nd round receivers become really viable top end fantasy starters. So it's interesting. It's a good conversation to have. I'd like to see how, these last 2 weeks or week and a half, whatever it is, of preseason shakes out before I make a definitive statement on him. But he's definitely moving up. I mean, I know he's a great blocker. Shanahan loves that. You know what I mean? Like, Concepcion has really been showing really good things, but again, it's still preseason. He still has like the drop questions. We know the Browns quarterback situation. So I kind of hate Concepcion, but the talent he's obviously very talented. Yeah, we'll see. I can't make a definitive statement on him yet, but it's interesting. I just want to see where you think he is as a guy who's, San Francisco guy. So,
Yeah,
sounds like
I'm in a dynasty league with our friend Alex. It's a rebuilding team, dumping team. I have picked 2, 9, and 10. And so 2 will probably be Tate, maybe Price. I'm still deciding. I have no running backs in that team at all. But 9 or 10, I was hoping Stribling would be there for me, and I'm getting less confident about that by the day now as he rises. So we'll see.
you'll have Cyrus Allen, if anything. Don't worry about it.
That's right.
All right. Well, that brings us to the last and final piece of the San Francisco puzzle. Mr. George Kittle, who's going 118 in PPR, 122.5 in standard. I am now and always have been a huge George Kittle fan. Whenever he plays, he dominates. So I'm buying these ADPs. He's already off PUP. He might not play week 1 because of that long, plane ride they have. So like I've seen people say, they might hold him out just to make him healthier for the rest of the season. I'm okay with that. Even if that happens, I'm still going to buy him these ADPs. I think these are terrific ADPs to get George Kittle at because when he plays, he's one of the top tight ends in the league. Is he going to get injured again? Yeah, maybe. I know that comes with George Kittle, but this ADP, I'm all in.
Yeah, so I think I'm buying this ADP mainly based on the kind of guys that you would get right before him and after him at this ADP. And PPR, you're talking about Kelsey goes a little earlier, Andrews goes after, Jake Ferguson, David Njoku, your boy Isaiah Likely, Juwan Johnson. I think the upside with Kittle is probably higher than all of those guys. So yeah, I'm buying this ADP, but this is a situation where I'm definitely taking a flyer on another tight end late, just because I think he will miss week 1. I don't know why you would take a 32 or whatever year old guy who's coming off an Achilles and put him on a plane to Australia. I would just sit him out and start him in week 2. So you need someone for week 1, and then you'll probably need someone inevitably when he misses a couple of games because that happens. I think the love fest for Kittle is interesting. Everyone is forgetting the complaints about him used to be that, he'll get you 20 points or he'll get you 2, because sometimes they just keep him in as a blocker and they don't use him as a receiver some games. But that kind of boom or bust situation is there for almost all tight ends outside of the top 3 or 4. And I think they're going to need pass catchers, as we talked about. So he's going to be used more as a receiver now than maybe he might have been in previous years. So yeah, I'm buying this ADP. You got to tread with some caution, and I have him in Dynasty, so we should talk later, since you're such a big fan.
I'm a huge fan, but unfortunately, which Dynasty? I'm dumping there, so it doesn't really help.
Too bad.
And I got my boy Likely, but I do need a receiver there. I know you got a whole bunch of receivers, so we should talk about receivers.
We will talk.
And his inconsistency thing, I feel like that hasn't been a thing for a few years now. I feel like whenever he plays, he's just doing it. You know what I mean? Like I'm just looking at his numbers, like last year, 24.
It's gotten better. Yeah.
It look he's pretty consistent. 23, it looks like he was still kind of inconsistent. But
some of it is he has better chemistry with Purdy than I think he did with Garoppolo.
But yeah, I mean, if you sell him cheap enough, I'll buy Purdy from you. I mean, Kittle from you. But
right,
to your point that he's gonna, when he misses, who actually is a great grab if you own Kittle, get Jake Tungus.
Yes.
Like I think Tungus usually when he does fill in, kind of does the work. You know what I mean? And you don't have to worry about nothing else. But that's a guy you can get in free agency. I'm guessing you don't even need to draft him.
Great call.
All right, wraps up the 49ers for us. It's Manu's lead now.
All right, we go to the champs. Again, much to my chagrin, Seattle Seahawks, home of cloudy skies, but a sunny disposition with that Super Bowl under their belt. So we start off with slinging Sam Darnold, no longer seeing ghosts, the Ghostbuster himself. He's got an ADP of 141 in PPR and 152 in standard. mean much for a quarterback, I guess. Ooh, the
No,
discrepancy. But
he's
we're
like a 12,
talking,
13.
yeah, around 12, 13. So at this ADP, let's see, who are you talking about in that range? You're talking about guys like Jordan Love, Tyler Shuck, Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray actually is quite a bit higher, but CJ Stroud, Fernando Mendoza. So I think I'm probably buying him at that ADP. I'm still, as I said, a bit of a believer in the Packers turning over a new leaf. So maybe I take Jordan Love over him and they're in a similar range. But outside of that, I think he's solid. If you're the sort of person who likes to wait on quarterback, wait as long as possible, maybe you wait and take him. But, you might want to wait a little bit longer and try to platoon with like a Daniel Jones and Malik Willis or Willis and Aaron Rodgers. So I don't know that you need to take him there. So as I think about it now and look at the numbers more, I think I'm selling this ADP because fundamentally it's a guy with one pass catcher and a team that wants to run and a team with a good defense and a team that sort of won in spite of him more than because of him. He was more of a passenger than the bus driver, I think. So I think I'm selling this ADP going around in circles.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I'm going to sell on Darnold. My hope is to do better than Darnold. If I'm in the Darnold camp of QBs, I've messed up already on that position. Like, I don't actually mind, like, kind of avoiding the position until late, but this is too late because, like you said, he's kind of very boring. I'm actually surprised to see he had 4,000 yards last year. That was a little bit shocking to me because everything you said is 100% right. Low volume, really kind of one receiver. They started doing the tush push now with AJ Barner. It's not even him doing it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I'd rather have Danny Dimes. I just think, if he's back and healthy, he showed MVP caliber numbers last year before getting hurt. While Darnold, I just had him. I remember having him, and you can get a 12 from him in leagues just as easily as you can get like a 22. And his upside's like very limited and very, he had 2 4 TD games and 1 3 TD game, and everything else was like 2 or less. So that's just very uninspiring. And yeah, I need to do better than Darnold. Otherwise, I've done something wrong in drafting the QB position.
Yeah. And they also lost the OC who ran that offense last year. He went to Vegas and is now the coach there, Kubiak. So, there's going to be, there could be some growing pains there too. You take price high, sort of seems like they want to run the ball more. They already ran the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I'm worried a little less about the OC because they said, I forget the guy's name, but he's basically a disciple. So it seems like, he's going to introduce some new concepts, but it's kind of the same offense.
Fair enough. So next we have Jadarian Price, taken very late in the first round in the Memorial Clyde Edwards-Helaire draft slot. The Super Bowl champ takes a running back late. Hopefully this works out a little better. Good running back 2 on his own college team. That's a little scary, but all the metrics look quite good. And the reports out of camp are phenomenal. He looks good. He looks explosive. He's catching passes more than ever before. The only question is, the other guys on the roster, mainly Zach Charbonnet, once he comes back from injury, could he pose any kind of threat? I don't think so. I think Zach Charbonnet is kind of like a ham and egger, 3 yards in a cloud of dust kind of guy. I don't think that he has the ceiling to really threaten Price. So I kind of like Price at this ADP. So this ADP, I should have said his ADP is 79 in PPR, 71 in standard. So that puts him in the neighborhood of Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, RJ Harvey, Kenny Gainwell. I think the upside for Price is probably higher than all of those guys. All of the guys I just mentioned have other running backs to deal with who are better. I think than Zach Charbonnet is and healthier than Zach Charbonnet is. So I kind of like him as maybe your running back too, certainly as your flex running back. He's a great pick. So I'm buying this.
Yeah, same. I mean, especially, and you made a great point, like the guys around him are just not necessarily more inspiring, right? So like if this is a running back pick that I'm looking at in this range, then he definitely seems like the best guy available at this point in time. And, like you said, I mean, in camp, it looks like they trust him to catch the ball. He's been doing everything, including sitting due to injury and soreness. So he's truly run the full gamut there, right? But it seems like he's okay. It seems like he's back already. So yeah, I mean, I'm getting him in Acton's. So that excites me a lot. The fact that he is catching the ball and he is looking good, right? Because like you said, like it could have been a hilarious situation. It still could be, of course. And it did worry me that the Seahawks actually did not want him. They were trying to trade this pick, but they just weren't getting enough. So they just kind of went with him. But the situation really couldn't be better, right? Because Charbonnet, we don't know when he's going to be back. And once he is back, like even if it's kind of a Walker Charbonnet type of split, Walker will still kind of lead back on that.
Yeah.
So I don't really mind it. So yeah, I'm with you. I think that's a really good value on him, or at least solid value. So I'm buying those ADPs as well.
Great. And so now we have the aforementioned Zach Charbonnet. His PPR ADP is 136 and standard is 131. So that puts him in late round 11 or early round 12. And the running backs in that range are guys like Tajay Spears, Woody Marks, Kamara, Jordan James. I think I would prefer someone like Tajay Spears or Woody Marks just because I think they have a little bit more upside and they're healthy. Charbonnet obviously is coming to a better offense, but I think I'm selling this ADP. I think I can do better with this draft slot than Zach Charbonnet. He's a solid player, but he's never been an incredibly explosive player. I think he's been kind of an overachiever up to this point, and now he's coming back. He's trying to come back really quickly from a bad injury that was suffered in the postseason, not in the regular season, if I remember correctly, or at the end of the regular season. So I am skeptical that he's going to contribute much in the first month. And by then, Price may just have a total chokehold on the job. So I'm selling this ADP. I'll let someone else take it.
Yeah, I mean, the only concern I have with Charbonnet is I just don't know when he's going to be back, right? Like the ADP is actually not that bad. It's like late enough. I think when he's back, he's going to have a role. He's going to have like a usable role, I think, as a flex. Once he's actually back, I think will be a no-brainer. And he'll have potential to be a high-end flex, maybe a low-end second, maybe.
Really? You think he can be a RB3/2?
It's possible, right? If Price is kind of like not really running away with the job, like, they got Manny Wilson, they got George Holani as the other guys. It's just not necessarily inspiring if Price hasn't put a chokehold on the job. And again, I don't think they've run a system where anybody's going to have a chokehold. They're always going to split, right? I mean, I know they have a new offensive coordinator. Maybe, one of the things he's going to change up is the structure of the touches, but it just doesn't feel that way, right? Like it's a proof of concept before I believe it. So yeah, I think those are great values. The only thing is if he's out till week 8, then at that point it's a little pricey, right? It's not like super expensive, but it's a little pricey to hold to a guy week 8.
Yeah, you're going to want that. You're going to want that roster slot.
Yeah, I don't know when their bye week is. So like, with the bye week potentially after week 8, I'm actually looking at week 11. So yeah, so let's say he's out week 8, will they bring him back or will they hold him past the bye week? So we don't know. That's the only scary thing about him, any kind of small setback and he might be out basically until fantasy playoffs start, which does nobody no good. You're not going to be starting him then if you haven't seen him play. So yeah, I think it's really not about the talent. It's more about the return date. So if I don't have a clearer picture on it, everything right now seems pretty positive on him. So currently I would take him, but, at these values. But if I take him and I see that he's going to be out a while, it would just be a wasted pick. I would probably drop him. I'm not holding on to this dude until like week 12 or whatever.
All right. I think that's enough on Zach Charbonnet. Let's move on to a good play. Jackson Smith-Njigba, the star receiver for last year, the breakout star, was just phenomenal. Won a lot of people titles because he wasn't taken super high and paid off handsomely. So his ADP PPR is 5 and in standard is 6. And, we talked about him a little earlier. You said you would take him over Puka as your second wide receiver off the board. I would take him after Puka, I think, but I had Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's the next guy kind of on the list in that range. I think JSN, everything, it was just like perfect, pure run out for him. He got all of the targets. He got all the touchdowns. The yardage was phenomenal. The route running was just elite. And Sam Darnold managed not to throw up on his shoes and get him the ball. So everything worked out perfectly. I can't imagine it's going to work out that perfectly this year. But, the other thing was their defense was elite last year. And it's rare for a defense performing at that high of a level to do it again a second year. If that's the case, Seattle is going to have to throw a little bit more. And none of the rest of their pass catchers are so impressive to me that I think that I think they could really threaten JSN. So he could have another big year, and you don't want to bank on someone to have like a career apex year 2 years in a row. But I think the regression is not going to be much, and I think he could have a great year. So I put him behind Puka, but I could see your argument for putting him ahead of Puka, and I think he's definitely ahead of Amon-Ra based on his youth and the target share. I think he's great.
Yeah, and I mean, these are the ADPs the way they should be, right? Like it's hard to argue these ADPs. It's the same argument as with Puka. Just if you prefer one to the other, fine. And he's set new career highs every year. Will he do it again this year? I don't know, but I also feel like if his yardage goes down, it's possible his TDs will go up, right? He only had 10 TDs, even though it seemed like he scored it like after every catch, because it's not like they added much to that offense. They didn't really add anything to their offense. So, it's hard for me to say he's gonna lose anything, right? If he loses the yardage to Shaheed, let's say Shaheed becomes more acclimated with the system, he'll get more of the yardage. I could see JSN maybe getting more touchdowns to even it out. And like you said, the defense could backslide a little, which will give them more reason to throw more. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, there's really very little to say about this ADP. Seems where it should be. If you want to do the Puka JSN argument, makes sense.
Great. So let's move on to Rashid Shaheed, who came over from New Orleans to Seattle in a midseason trade and was a fantastic kick returner and punt returner, but did not do very much on the receiver. So I think Shaheed, with the benefit of an offseason to integrate him into the offense, I think we're going to see him produce at a much higher level this year. And they badly need a second pass catch. Cooper Kupp, who we'll talk about shortly, is, his best days are behind him. Their tight ends are okay, but they're not dominant receiving threats. So there's a void there for Shaheed, and I do think he has the talent. I think the sense was that he was a little slow in picking up the offense when he came over midseason, but he's had plenty of time now. They gave him an extension. They want him to succeed. I'm buying this ADP. The ADPs are 129 in PPR, 109 in standard. So that puts him in round, 11,
10
and 11. So I think that's a good range for him.
Yeah, so Rashid Shaheed is kind of like Alec Pierce to me. Just he's on probably a worse passing offense. He's definitely not, he's got to compete with a much better number one. So I don't like his type of profile. I'm going to sell both of these. I get, what people like about this type of profile and why people draft them. But to me, it's just too kind of chaotic of a profile. I'd draft him later, right? Like this is a guy who should be going maybe 13, 14th round to me. Anything earlier, it just seems like you're just going to be passing on better talent, more upside talent.
Well, here are the guys going right after him. Okay. Jaden Higgins is out for the year, so we'll take him out of it. But Keenan Allen, Trey Tucker, Jalen McMillan, our boy Stribling. I think I take Stribling over him, but
I might take McMillan ahead of him, especially if Ibuka's
maybe
not ready.
if Ibuka's turf toe is still an issue, yeah. But otherwise, I don't know that anyone else has the upside of.
Yeah, maybe not. But I mean, I could just not be taking receivers at this point, right? I just maybe will just take another running back, or maybe I need a tight end, or I'll just go to a QB. If I haven't drafted one. I'm just saying, like I get it, but to me, if it's just a flex league, 3 receiver league, sure, Shaheed seems like a great guy to have. You know what I mean? Like makes sense. You're probably gonna have very limited options. But in standard, I see Concepcion's going behind him. My man Jalen Coker's going behind him. I love that dude. You know this. So there's a whole bunch of guys I would take ahead of him personally.
Fair enough. Yeah, we disagree, but I don't feel strongly about it.
And in PPR, I mean, I don't really hate Keenan Allen, right? Keenan Allen might have a sneaky PPR.
It's just
PPR value
how many games before he pulls a hammy, I guess. That's the main question. But yeah, as long as he's healthy, he's going to be.
Does he get hurt still? Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember if he got hurt last year.
Last year he was pretty good, but most years he's not.
Just uninspiring.
Yeah. Okay, next we've got Cooper Kupp. The Cupster has a PPR of 152, ADP and PPR 152. Actually, 152 in both standard and PPR. I am selling this ADP. I think that you're never going to start him with confidence, even if there are injuries to that wide receiving core. I don't think he's at a point in his career where he can command targets and produce at a level that makes it fantasy relevant. He's going to be the first guy you cut, and you're going to be wondering, why did I bother drafting him?
Yeah, I mean, just move on. He has no value. You know what I mean? Like, I think they like Shaheed more than him at this point. It looks like they want Troy Horton to already start taking him over. He's just old, right? Nothing against Cooper Kupp, but I mean,
I think Horton got hurt
value
again, by the way. I think
I saw that. It's unfortunate.
But yeah. The guys you can get instead, Cyrus Allen, Jalen Naylor. I'd rather take a swing on either of those guys.
Well, I don't know about Jalen Naylor, but Cyrus Allen for sure.
Okay, and then last but not least, AJ Barner, PPR ADP of 160. We're looking at round 14 for him. Last tight end off the board, or one of the last tight ends off the board. I think he's not bad. He showed some flashes at times. He's a physical guy. He's a decent receiver. Sometimes they use him in the tush push, so you might get a cheap touchdown that way. But, if you're going to take a flyer at the end of your draft, you would like it to be a running back or, a receiver, someone with a little more upside. I think this guy is more of a waiver wire injury replacement than he is someone you draft or actually roster with any confidence.
Yeah, I 100% agree. He's going right behind Hunter Henry, who to me is like 100 times better.
Yeah.
Again, Dalton Schultz is going behind him. So yeah, he's a guy who I think I might have even used last year, sparingly, because he had some interesting weeks in a PPR. So he's a guy you watch, but he shouldn't be drafted unless, again, you just completely missed, on your strategy and just got no tight ends. Who are they playing week one? If he has a good week one matchup, then I get it. But it's just still so dangerous, right? I feel like you're going to have somebody who's just probably more reliable or just more interesting that week one. He's definitely a guy you should watch, but yeah, they're going against the Patriots at Arizona, week 2 maybe. At Arizona, at Washington, they got a good early schedule after they play the Patriots week 1. So yeah, maybe AJ Barner will have some value early on.
Yeah. All right. Well, that wraps up NFC West. What are your overarching thoughts on this division as we come to a close?
Yeah, so this actually wraps up the whole ADP series. We're completely done. But this is, this is a strong division, very interesting, a lot of really interesting names. We're going to see how Jeremiah Love does, right? He's going to be the rookie everybody's keeping an eye on, and he's not even starting the season healthy. But, you have the champs here. You have the guys who are the favorites for the Super Bowl, even though I was surprised that the Rams are the favorites. But a lot of interesting guys. The thing that interests me the most, honestly, is to see what happens with the Niners and where their fantasy season goes, because it seems like there could be a changing of a guards possibly there, both at the receiver and running back position. So yeah, I'm interested to see what happens with some of these guys. How about yourself?
NFC West, NFC best. It was the best division last year. I don't think it'll be quite that good this year, but yeah, it's interesting. We've got some super studs in this division, like McBride and Puka and JSN. And then we have some exciting rookies, like you talked about. We've got Love, we've got Price, we've got my boy Stribling, and some young guys. But we don't have too many sort of like middle-aged guys or people in their prime. Most of them are like, it's like older players, a couple of superstars, and then a bunch of young guys. So could be a little volatile. Kyron's in his prime. Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no, you're right.
He's the only one, though. You're right.
But,
you're absolutely right. He's the only one.
Yeah. And then the other thing that's interesting is you've got two of the better defenses in the league, LA and Seattle. So, are you going to have low scoring games? Is that going to like put a lid on the fantasy production for some of the divisional games? Hopefully not. Hopefully we get some shootouts because there's talented players here, but that could be a little frustrating. At least you won't have to worry about weather for these teams for the most.
So, I mean, last year they had one of each. They had a low scorer, 21-19, and then they had a shootout, 38-37 in OT. So, something of that sort, maybe.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah. Where do you think your Niners finish in this division?
I think they finish. I think they probably finish third. They might finish second. I don't see them winning the division.
All right, so that sounds like they're going to finish slightly above the Cardinals.
Yeah, more than slightly above the Cardinals. But yeah, I think the Rams, everything just looks too perfect on paper with Myles Garrett and everything. As I said, I think it's a little more fragile than it looks, and the team that looks amazing on paper usually doesn't do it. So
right.
And then for Seattle, like everything went right for them, despite Darnold being their quarterback. So I don't know. I think one of those teams falls off a little, and San Francisco sneaks into the second position, maybe gets a wild card. But I don't know who. I'm not sure who's going to win.
Yeah, I'll disagree with you on that. I do think the Rams are getting a lot of hype. It kind of reminds me of the Eagles team that like bought everybody a few years ago, but the only difference is the Rams didn't buy everybody, right? They had these dudes and they're kind of like plugging holes around them, which is kind of what they did in their Super Bowl season a few years back. So this looks kind of similar. So it's very interesting to see. You're absolutely right. Can't wait to see how it shapes up. But that actually, like I said, wraps up our ADPs for the NFL. And we'll be dropping some other stuff for you guys soon. The season is almost here. We're excited. We want to thank Manu for joining us as always. He's great. Talks a lot, but we like it. It's enjoyable. It's educational. So remember to watch, like, subscribe, send in your questions, anything you want us to address if we're not doing it. As Adam always says, feel free to argue with us. We like the hate. We love to argue, and tune into the next one. Thanks, everyone.